Welcome to round 3 of the FIL Luge World Cup. Today we are in Altenberg in eastern Germany. One of the toughest tracks in the world is prepped and ready. We had the Nations Cup race yesterday, and the ice conditions here are always very good. The Altenberg Ice Meister often flies around the world helping others with their track. A track that was built back in East German times and has a pretty fierce reputation, to say the least. It has several particularly tricky corners to deal with. It has one of the biggest kreisels in the world. That is a corkscrew corner that doubles back round under itself, 360 degrees. Then the corners after that are both fast and furious, often taking the competitors up past the 90-degree point and back down again within a split second. Very tricky to deal with. Well, we're going to start with the doubles this morning. They start from their own double start. A forerunner about to come down just to test the timing system. And plenty of forerunners queuing up to do that here in Germany. The Germans are very, very talented when it comes to doubles luging. Eggert and Benneken are leading the current World Cup. And the Tobys are in second. So it's Germany 1-2 after 2 World Cup races. They're on home ice. Certainly they look like being favourites here once again. So we'll be having the forerunner coming down now. And afterwards, we will have the 24 sleds of this FIL Luge doubles contest. Welcome to the Wiesmann Luge World Cup, round number 3, Altenberg, Germany, and the doubles first run. And we're joining the action live as the forerunner goes down. The ice here minus 1.1 degrees Celsius, air temperature just below 1 degree, and the humidity exceptionally high, 97%. Now, what that tends to suggest is snow could come at any time. Therefore, they have not made the track too cold in case it does start to fall. Now, the on board, something like this from right at the top, that's the bobsleigh start. The actual double start considerably further down. Eggert and Benneken have both the start record and the downtime record here, 41.38. And this is what it's like on board, certainly for a single anyway. Coming around down into the 360-degree corner, the kreisel. One of the hardest corners to really steer correctly down through the bottom section. 12, 13, 14, 15. These big sweeping left-handers down the bottom here. Speeds well in excess of 130 kilometers per hour achievable. Some 70 miles per hour. And then back up the hill over the finish line. And it really does test you in every way, this track. It's long enough for a good pilot to drive themselves back into contention, but also it does deserve and needs a good power start as well. And we're looking through the starting order here. Those who qualified through the Nations Cup are the first 12, down to Gudrumovics and Kaulins of Latvia. And then through on to 24th position there, Ryder and Rasner, who are perhaps most likely to break the German success so far this season. They managed a bronze medal in the first World Cup of the season and are looking on good form and could well, with this being a long track and them being particularly good pilots, pull something out the bag here and perhaps supersede the 2 top German crews who have been very, very dominant in the last 6-7 years. Now then, let's start at the top with the first pair, and it is Atto Desarai and Musaye of Romania. Have a look at their start, 5.965. about 0.3 of a second off of what the best are doing there. 9 down into 10, that long straight. Very easy to get tempted into a steer. Now they're waving up and down through the Kreisel, the corkscrew corner. And the flatter the line there, the better. Through 12.13. They make that look small, and that's how it should look. 14.15, all good so far. 106.3 kilometers per hour. Just the Kreisel being a weak spot in their driving. Over the finish line at 42.565. And I think they would have taken that if they were offered it at the start. That's a pretty solid time for the Romanians to start with. Next up, it'll be Lucas and Antonin Broz, the Broz brothers from the Czech Republic. Now, let's have a look at this Kreisel, waving up and down enormously. You can see the legs there starting to part. The front man, Atto Desarai, ready to stick his legs on the ice. I think he thought it could go all wrong very quickly. And that's just because he didn't get this steer correct as he first went on and allowed the sled with that centrifugal force to go right up high rather than taking an early steer and keeping a smooth flat line around the Kreisel. It's a 3-pressure corner, and that takes 3 separate steers, and they are steers done with incredible precision necessary to make it successful around that corner. Now, the Broz brothers, let's see how they start. They give it a good old hit off the top, tucked in, down early enough, and it's really quite a smooth take on here. This is about the one easy thing there is at Altenberg, and that is the double start take on, which is at many tracks almost feels like an afterthought. And let's have a look at the Kreisel as they round through that 360 degrees, a much flatter, smoother apex. And indeed they are up in the lead, round through 14. And as long as that stays green, they are going to stay in the lead. 108.9, their speed's quicker. And they had a 1/4 of a second advantage at the last split, make that a 1/3 of a second as they cross the finish line off of the final corner. And the Broz brothers are 42.225. Puts them up into first position so far. And the track record set by Eggert and Benneken here in February of 2016 is only about 0.8 quicker than that. What does that suggest? I would say that off of the first 2 runners, that track record is breakable this morning, assuming no snow starts to fall. The track conditions are indeed good enough for a track record to be broken. Now Solkanski and Stutzlak. Little moment of silence before the explosion. The Slovakian pair. Off they go through the start line. And they managed to better the Czech duo start. 0.025 is their advantage as they came into the Kreisel. As they exit, it's at just 0.8 of a second, so it's all down to the bottom of the track now. Almost evens with the Broz brothers. Oh, it's almost a negative G section as you come round through 14 and onto the flat. You almost go over a brow of a hill there, and well, the speed wasn't great, and in the end they are unable to claw back the time they had lost as they entered into 15. It's only a very small margin, but they go into second place. You can see the aggression on their faces. It's very much a relaxed explosion that you need in Luge. If you're too uptight, and really too aggressive, then you'll never load properly and actually get onto the sled right. Now the turn of Peter Pence and Georg Fischler. These are two world-class pilots who have found themselves right down the starting order, having missed a race. They didn't get up inside the top 12 in terms of seeding points, and that's done on the previous 3 races. Makes sense if they've missed a race. Therefore, they had to qualify through the Nations Cup. Pence and Fischler of Austria, and surprisingly didn't do that well in a one-run race in the Nations Cup. So let's see how they get on here. Very flat, smooth line. Maybe they'll make amends for yesterday's Nations Cup. You would expect them to win a Nations Cup, that's for sure. They are definitely top 5 in the world as a duo. 3/10 up at the moment, 108.6. We're getting a good idea of what a possible world-class slide looks like. 4/10 is their advantage at 41.817, and it certainly looked a country mile better than the previous slides. It was slick, it was flat through the corners, wasn't waving around and taking what was just a longer line when you're waving around. But also the start, very solid. Peter Pence on top's a giant of a guy. Fischler behind is the classic Luge backman, very small and enveloped by the big guy on top. This makes for good aerodynamics. Now, they are 4/10 plus in the lead of those who have gone down so far. Now, if you're a betting man, you'd probably say they're going to stay there for, I don't know, a good few sleds, I'd imagine. Looking at who's to come in the next 4 or 5 sleds. I think that's an assumption or a bet worth making anyway, as Kvala and Kudera of the Czech Republic take to the hill. The Czech duo, second Czech duo we've seen down. Nice flat line. That's good. Very good. But the starts, giving away a bit of time there, and already it's 4/10 down on what the Austrians were doing. Exeter 14 heads up in the airflow, 106.8 kilometers per hour. The speed nowhere near as quick as the Austrians, and I think the Austrians are just going to make everybody look bad for a while here until we get up to the world-class teams who are through by seeded right. 42.51 is indeed quicker than the Romanians, and is about what you'd expect from this Czech duo. The start left a lot to be desired in terms of actual speed and power off the hill. Wasn't perfect.
Ein Track ist clear. Startfreigabe für die beiden Boden erteilt. Und damit kann es losgehen.
Looking psyched up and ready to go. Kristens Putins and Imants Marcinkevics. The Latvian duo who've worked their way up through the junior setup, and you can see that humidity is indeed just turning into a little bit of snow in the air, and that's exactly why the Icemeister didn't have the ice down at -3, -4, instead keeping it at -1, because when snow starts to fall like that, it will be grabbed by the very cold ice and almost turn into a hoarfrost, which can make very unfair conditions for some and not for others. Well, 3/10 of a second down. As I said before, Pence and Fischler may well sit on top here for 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 sleds, who knows, before the likes of the Germans come down, who I'd imagine will go ahead of their time. It was good, but it wasn't absolutely world class. But for the time being, Pence and Fischler by 0.45. In fact, half a second ahead of these two, which in a sport of thousandths of a second gives you an idea just how good the Austrians were. Those spikes on the gloves, just allowing a bit of purchase off of the ice as they pull themselves away at the start.
Track is clear, Team Korea, Park and Joe.
Park and Cho of Korea. A lot of eyes on these two. A lot of expectation on these two. Of all of the Korean sliders across the bobsleigh and skeleton. These two are certainly earmarked as potential, not medalists at the Olympics coming up, but rather a potential top 10. Which would be something else, considering Korea really were nowhere just a few years ago in sliding sports. But now these two have propelled themselves up the rankings. 2/10 down at the moment. So that is compared to Pence and Fischler, however. And Pence and Fischler look pretty pleased about the ride. They did. 108.2, great top end speed. Goodness, they got the sled set up very much spot on, and wow, 0.483 behind Pence and Fischler. That slips them down into 5th position. But it must be very tight between 2nd and 5th. Mark Hatton, who's helping coach the Koreans, the former Brit, will indeed be very pleased with that, as he should be. Krusen and Shirk of the USA. Bill Tavares, a little slap on the back. The coach, who's been helping the American team for many, many years. I think the track DJ's got the wrong song for the wrong team. Normally matching up with the countries that they are from. Never mind. Krusen and Shirk going after the sound of Gangnam Style. Oh, goodness me. Not a perfect start there. 0.003 of a second back on Pence and Fischler after a very powerful start, but they didn't manage to navigate the first couple of corners well. Andor through 12.13, head right up. Krusen looks nervous through what are a couple of pretty dangerous corners. 0.389, 105 kilometers per hour. Slowest speed we've seen so far, and off of a supercharged start. It all seemed to go wrong, though they haven't been punished in terms of time anywhere near as much as you might have thought they would have. So 6th place for Team USA. Not so great is the body language there. Living in America, now they've almost caught up the track DJ with his musical set. And look at that through corner 13, feet coming down on the ice afterwards. The next corner is a brutal, horrible corner. It turns left almost a perfect 90 degrees in a split second. Shumalevsky, Kovalevsky of Poland, our next pair down the hill. .027 in the lead. Power starters, these poles. Two big, strong young men, and their ability to slide is hit and miss. You imagine just another season or two and they could be right up there. Oh my goodness, Exit at 12, very late. That could have been a flip right there. Through 14. And they are only 1/10 of a second down on Penson Fischler. That's good news for them. Probably slot into second place here. Yes, they do by 0.24. Seems like a big margin, but you have to remember Penson Fischler somehow managing to languish down in the Nations Cup lower end. Not quite sure how that happened for them, but they certainly put in a solid first slide. And Chmielewski and Kovalevsky should not be too disappointed with that at all. Some very good pilots have already come down. 9 sleds down. They're in second position. So our Italian duo of Nagier and Mallier. The next 2 down. Two young men, just 19 years old, managing to get up into the World Cup racing for the first time in their career. So big moment for these young guys. And it's not faced them at all. Great start. Really good start. Through Kreisel, exit off. Drifting over to the right where they need to be. Through 12, very good. 0.043, they're still in the lead ahead of Penson Fischler. This is extraordinary, what a debut to have. 107.5, okay, they're behind Penson Fischler. They may well be 1500s, 2/10 behind in the end, but, well, almost 1500s. That was brilliant. Great slide by them. There's Tartaglia, the strength and conditioning coach. He'll certainly be very pleased with his part of the deal. That was a power start, to say the least. And we may be looking at 2 new stars of the sport. Very cool and comfortable from 9 down into 10, that long straight. The reason the director picks up on it is because it's so easy to be tempted into a steer there, and if you do, you more often than not will end up fishtailing around and going into a slide, which can really lead to, well, you can imagine, to a crash. Steering is best saved for the corners when you have that G-force helping you stick to the corner. The Russian duo, Yushikov and Prokhorov. Vladislav Yushikov and Yuri Prokhorov have been around sliding the double circuit for best part of a decade. Probably fair to say they are the longest serving members of the Russian side. Through 12, little late, head comes up into 13, they take it low, 14, clean enough exit, 108.2 is good top end speed. Now they were at 2100s behind Penson Fischler, but the speed is almost matching what the Austrians did, and they don't lose more than another 100th through the final corner. Big thumbs up from Albert Demchenko, and almost a crack of a smile on his face. 42.048. Through 12. That's a very good slide. Feet pointing forwards, just cleaving their way through the air, as you'd expect from 2 seasoned campaigners. There's always a chance of fear suddenly creeping into your piloting on such a track. Now, Gudrumovics and Kalnins are our next two down the hill. Their starts just 200ths of a second off of Pence and Fischler, but what we've seen is well, they are the 5th fastest start. Pence and Fischler were the 4th. And what we've seen is that several crews have gone quite a bit quicker than Pence and Fischler, which is a surprise, actually, because normally the Austrian duo are pretty powerful out of the start, but they were certainly top dogs so far. Down the bottom, Gudrumovics and Kalnins. Ooh, that was a slick bit of piloting there as he came up over the brow of the hill. Out of 14, 108.2 is good speed as well. 0.13 the difference. They go into second place, and that is all of the Nations Cup qualifiers down the hill. So Pence and Fischler indeed duffed up the other 11 qualifiers, and by a pretty significant margin, 0.13. So the fun now really starts as the top 12 teams in the world will all take to the hill by their seeding rights. They have pre-qualified, and next down therefore will be Bogdanov and Medvedev, Denesiev and Antonov, so back-to-back Russian crews. Fascinating to see if either of these two teams can eclipse Pence and Fischler. Perhaps, probably more likely not, I'd guess. I think Tristan Walker and Justin Smith, then after them, 15 sled down the hill, is probably the most likely to go ahead of the Austrians. Before, of course, we get to the top Italians and Germans. Now, let's see the start. Wow, they're very powerful. Bogdanov, Medvedev. Oh, a little steer there, but the head goes back. Staying relaxed. Wanted to avoid the tap off the wall, but little wavy. That second to third pressure, not exactly the perfect line, and they've been punished for it. They've gone behind Pence and Fischler through 13. Exeter 14. Little steer to avoid the wall again. 106 kilometers per hour, and they're only going to go backwards in terms of time. And yes, 0.208. Demchenko almost doing a comedy disappointment there after being happy with the result Yushikov and Prokhorov managed, which actually was worse than that. He looked heavily disappointed with Bogdanov and Medvedev for being 2/10 off of Pence and Fischler. Certainly gave it plenty off the start, and we'll be following on with the third Russian pairing as the next duo down the hill.
Track is clear, Startfreigabe ist erteilt worden für das russische Team mit der Startnummer 14.
So the start, Denesiev and Antonov again. The Russians outstarting Pence and Fischler. Let's have a look if third time lucky. No steer there. That was considerably better than what the previous Russians had done, but Pence and Fischler were tremendous round the Kreisel. So too Denesiev and Antonov, though, keeping a very flat line, though the head's coming up now, rocking and rolling through 11-12. Bouncing about through 13, and 105.5 kilometers per hour. At 0.1 whatever will become 0.2 something at least, I'd guess. 0.25. Not quite so shocked this time, more just angry, the Siberian Tiger. Demchenko, head coach of the Russians there. Someone's got some runner polishing to do later on today. Well, did their bit at the start. That's all good. It was more reactionary steering. You could just watch Demchenko's face as instead of the pictures to know what's going on. Well, our next pair will be Walker and Smith, and they are indeed ready and on their sled as we see that peppering of snow coming down. For them, it's cross fingers, it's not starting to slow this track up. Doesn't appear to be. Getting ready for something big. Their season so far hasn't exactly been perfect. Having looked to be threatening for medals a couple of seasons ago, wherever they went, struggling to recapture that consistent form. You still see their ability is there, 0.085. Now let's see if my guess was correct, that Pence and Fischler, who were just fourth off the hill, may not have that lead until someone like Walker and Smith came down, was what I said. And after that big slide through 11-12, I don't think I'm exactly a soothsayer. I think I'll stick to the day job. 103.9 kilometers per hour is in fact the worst speed we've seen by anybody, and what was a great start suddenly went very wrong in the middle section. And I think that just sums up Walker and Smith. I was kind of hoping they'd got through these inconsistencies and back to what they were doing best, which is putting in constant good runs a couple of years ago. Something's not quite right in the synergy at the moment between sled, the duo, and the ice. It's not in the starts. Their start was very solid. Flopping off the end of corner 11. All that ice being cut, just slowing them down. Well, for them, they can only go back to the top and try and do a better second run. Simple as that. And a lot of bad runs this season could just be put down to get them out the way before the Olympics happens. So, Oberstolz and Gruber, two highly experienced men, 36 years old per man, and they've won the overall World Cup on a couple of occasions, European Championships. But they just lack a bit in the starts now. You hate to put it down to age. Could just be the fact that some of the younger crews have raised the entire level of the sport. Then again, it could be the fact that they are the oldest, that they're just not quite as quick anymore. Anyway, 0.221 down, 107 kilometers per hour. Pence and Fischler were doing 108 through that big bottom heart shape, and 0.365. Tartaglia's not sure whether he's happy or not. I think he's probably not, actually, in when you look at it on reflection. Over a third of a second down on Pence and Fischler, who are old sparring partners of theirs. They really should be up near them, and also Pence and Fischler are of a similar age. They don't carry quite the same momentum as Pence and Fischler, who on body weight are somewhat heavier. Great form though. Look at the booties almost touching. Perfect aerodynamics. Very slick.
Prepare, you're the next.
So Jacob Hearns and Anthony Espinosa, the next American duo down the hill.
And Anthony Espinosa.
So much has gone on with the American team over the last few years. It's like a completely changed setup. Arguably the second best nation in the world now in lugeing. Hearns and Espinosa lay down a fairly decent start there. A few thousandths ahead of Pence and Fischler. Make that, well, no, do not make that a hundredth ahead, because they've actually gone from green to red. So they are behind the Austrians. Ooh, feet coming down on the ice. Similar to what we saw with the Canadians through 14. Almost started to come off a little early there. 106.3. The speed 108.5 for Pence and Fischler. So they're going to keep going backwards. 0.32 backwards in the end. So Hearns and Espinosa need to get back up the top and try and conquer the beast in their second run. Still a smile coming across the face of Hearns there. It's a wild ride, and plenty of dopamine getting released as you come rushing down the hill. Right there. 11-12 changeover is certainly a hairy moment for even the most experienced pilot to get right. Österreich. Up next, it's Stoy and Koller. Thomas Stoy, Lorenz Koller behind, and doubles luging is something the Austrians have really taken a huge interest in over the last decade, particularly because of Andreas and Wolfgang Linger, who won back-to-back Olympic Games, and not always the favourites. In fact, nowhere near the favourites the first time they took gold. But they are now major celebrities in Austria. And Stoy and Koller, the bright young things of doubles luging, 0.156 behind their compatriots. Oh, and it was good speed. Not good enough to make it 1-2 Austria. 1-6 anyway. And like a whole cluster of duos around that 42-second mark. They could jump up 6-7 places in the second run, or just as likely slip down 6-7 places, all on a matter of a few hundredths. It's really pretty close after you take the gap away from Pence and Fischler. Little high there on that third pressure. Bendel and Alt facing us in bib 23, bibs 23. So they'll be coming down second last. We are on to bibs 19. And that is Matt Mortensen and Jason Turdeman of the USA.
Let's do this, brother.
Very much in the prime of their condition. And indeed, sporting life. They are 29 and 32 years old. They've been together just long enough now to really understand each other, to bring their experience to the ice. Their start there wasn't great. They're behind Pence and Fischler by 0.076 as they enter the Kreisel. But that is so slick. Perfect piloting around the Kreisel. A little bit of a shift in the hips through 12. 0.1 and change down, now 0.26 down, but the speed is the quickest of anybody. My goodness me, almost 110 kilometers per hour, and 0.34. How did that happen? Is probably what everyone's thinking. If they were going faster than anyone else, how did they manage to lose more time? doesn't equate in the head necessarily, unless you think perhaps they took a longer line around one of those final two big sweeping corners, then it would maybe start to make sense. Well, the start can be improved upon, that's for sure. Exit of 12, just coming on there too late. You want to be on about 3-4 meters before that, so you're getting a nice angle without too much steering off for corner 13. A few little points to work on. Well, we talked about brothers winning Olympic medals. Andy in Euro 6, know a lot about that, having taken a bronze at the Olympics. Hitting it hard off the hill, that's for sure. The sled rocking back with the power. Be a little too hard off the hill. .033, now 3.8. Down on Penson Fischler, surprisingly wavy through the Kreisel for these two. Though they got the third wave timed well and exited arrow straight down into 11. Took a very low line around 13, perfect through 14, 107.7. Flopped off the end of 15 a little bit. And crossing the finish line, 0.26 behind. But again, so many men are clustered around the same time. So they don't have to worry too much. They just have to up their game 1 or 2% to suddenly zip up the leaderboard in the second run. So they're certainly in the running, even down in 9th. I would say they are in the running for a top 6 anyway. We still have the two big German crews to come down, so that'll no doubt bump them down to 10th and then 11th. That's an almost guaranteed happening. And indeed, we've got Goiker and Gam as well. Tobias Vendel there on the left. Looks like he's piloting a bobsleigh the way he does his imaginary run-throughs. But it is, of course, a very similar process, though steering done more with the feet than the hands. Tony Eggert, Sasha Beneken. They are the world #1s right now. World Cup leaders, overall World Cup champions last year. A little bit of fancy footwork to get them online, as they really did come very fast out of the Doppel's house. Down this long straight into the Kreisel. Drifting to the left, and if they're doing it, it must be right. Out of Kreisel, down into 11. Very nice. And even though it looked like it was going to be late out of 12, it was just fast, that's all. The speed gun will tell us a lot in a second. 1:11.1. I thought it was going to be very quick, and it was. It is the quickest by 2 kilometers per hour. And 0.087, not quite a 1/10 of a second, and I think that can just remind us how brilliant the slide of Penson Fischler was. That they are in second position by only 87 thousandths of a second. Look here, this is where you really realize they were going at very good speed. Normally a doubles luge would just flop off the corner there. Not them. They were fast enough to carry the speed without slipping off the end of 12. Perhaps my prediction of a track record being broken is looking pretty unlikely now that there's a peppering of snow. A 41.38 is the actual track record. Eggert and Beneken own that. Perhaps in the second run, if conditions change a little bit. Goiker and Gam of Germany, 2 new world champions. And there are a plenty in Germany. Not easy to get onto the World Cup if you are representing the German Federation. Now, 1/10 of a second down on the leaders, Eggert and Benneken. And I'm afraid pretty much everyone's going to suffer that, as they also have the start record here. Wow, that was similar to Eggert and Benneken, but a little clumsier. It must be pretty fast. 108.1 is indeed one of the top end speeds. Oh, they smacked into the woodwork, did they? Goodness, it was close. They didn't. Through corner 16. 0.317 behind. They slipped to 6th place. And they really didn't need to. I'm sure we'll see that bottom end again. Just letting it run a little too much. You do have to steer, of course, or you'll just smash into the woodwork at high speed. You'll just keep going up the corner, and well, if you didn't have the lipping, you'd go flying out the track. Down and in. That was quite slick, though perhaps they clipped the right-hand wall. Ooh, that was a moment when they had to do a bit of correction steering to get off of 12. And no, they didn't quite touch the woodwork. Through in 15, 16. But too close for comfort. Too close for Norbert. He's not happy. Bibs 23, Tobias Wendel and Tobias Alt. Our penultimate pair to come down the hill. Then we will have Ryder and Rastner last. .030. 0.037 is what Wendel are down on Eggert and Benneken. So the start deficit is still the deficit, though that's grown to nearly 1/10 of a second. The former Olympic and world champions, you're waiting for them to suddenly leap up and battle with Eggert and Benneken, but they're just not good enough. It's as simple as that. They are bettered at the starts, they're bettered at piloting, they're bettered at top-end speeds. Eggert and Benneken of the 3 different disciplines, the women's, the men's, and the doubles, they are by far and away the world #1s, and have a considerable margin over the rest of the world in terms of talent. It's as simple as that. They really are highly likely to win anyway. Now, let's not write off Ryder and Rastner, who we still have to come down the hill. They are the one pairing from another nation, bar Germany, that could trouble the leaders, Eggert and Benneken, in this first run. Why? Because they just seem to have a little bit of X factor about them. Here they are, Ryder in front. Ludwig Ryder, Patrick Rastner. There's a certain cocky confidence about the way they slide that sometimes leads to brilliance, other times can spell near disaster. Trying to control his breathing. 0.041, you don't want the visor fogging up. Not a huge margin behind, very similar to where the Tobys were. Still very similar to where the Tobys were. But they can get great top-end speed, Ryder and Rastner, if they round these big sweeping corners well, and they don't particularly. 106.9 kilometers per hour, looking all too ordinary this weekend. Over the finish line, 14th position, my goodness me, ouch. And Tartaglia has to suck in a bit of air there as if he's had a punch to the stomach. That's not great for 2 men that on their day can beat Eggert and Benneken, or certainly trouble them. Well, the story you would have guessed has happened. Eggert and Benneken have rushed out into the lead. You probably could have looked down at the start list and seen the names of Pence and Fischler and thought, well, they're most likely to put in a blazing first run and hang on for some time. That's exactly what happened. Ryder and Rastner didn't quite follow the story you may have written. They have slipped on down the order, and we'll get the official results for the first run in a moment or two. Here we are. So Pence and Fischler, by less than a tenth of a second, are behind Eggert and Benneken. Perhaps they had better ice than others, who knows. Vendel and Altler in third. The Latvians in fourth. The new Italians, how exciting that is, in fifth. And then Bogdanov and Medvedev in sixth. And look how close. Between fourth place or third place, 0.2 behind, through eighth place there, 0.31 behind. That's just a tenth of a second. All the way down to the Six brothers, 0.34 behind. So from third to 12th, there is about 12 or 13 hundredths. That is it. So a real battle in the second run. Walker and Smith, that's disappointing, down in second last. Fiesmann Luge World Cup round 3, doubles second run. Eggert and Benneken, top start. They have the track record, and they're in the lead as we look at the bird's eye view of the track here. The humidity 95%, so it's lowering, probably because of the peppering of snow that's already come out of the air. Vendel and Alt are our current leaders. The Olympic champions from Bavaria, bettered by Pence and Fischler. The brave Austrians, as ever, sliding head back, hitting at great top-end speeds, though not as good as Eggert and Benneken. World Cup leaders leading the World Cup once again at the halfway point here in Altenberg. Great track, always has a few moments of fear, even for the very finest pilots. It's long, it's fast, and very challenging. We're going in reverse order of the first run, and 24 teams will be taking to the hill. No one crashed, luckily, in the first run. Eggert and Benneken, our leaders, have the honor of coming down last week in Winterberg. It wasn't necessarily an honor in the first run to have a late start draw, as the weather really caused problems in all of the races. And with a few more snowflakes in the air coming again, it's coming and going, albeit very light. The track polished up highly in the half hour off. Certainly gives the Romanians the best ice they could possibly have. 5.994 their getaway. Down the straight, into the Kreisel, 360-degree corner. Exit of 10. Lovely arrow straight line through 11-12. Not going quite the speeds of the Germans, or they would have been much higher on those points. Down through the finish line. Up the finish straight, 42.686. That's a very comparable time to their first run. They don't look ecstatic with it, but then again, it was the slowest run of anybody in the first run, so it's unlikely to make headway up the field. Now 12 down into 13, that's where you really get violently taken on. It's a cracking corner, bone-cracking corner, if you like.
Track is clear, Startfreigabe ist erteilt.
Miro, on. Push there.
So Walker and Smith, they've got an advantage of 24 thousandths of a second, and It's not a huge amount, but they are capable of so much more. Great start. Look at that. 0.143 up already. So much more powerful out of the starts than the Romanians. They're a world-class duo when they're on form. Through the very fast part of the track. What's the speed? That's the question. 0.17 up is decent, but the speed 107 isn't exactly something to write home about. And they're saying it's only a small beating by the Canadians. A quarter of a second's fairly healthy. Disappointing perhaps for Walker and Smith, who probably wanted to lay down the law there on a second run and really hammer down a good second run. Look at that. Sideways there as they entered the track off of the start. You can just see as you go a little bit sideways, it just drags through the ice, the runners, and the ice isn't particularly hard and only -1 degrees, and that's for certain reasons to do with the humidity, but certainly makes them a lot slower and wipes a lot of speed off when you do those kind of mistakes. Now, Kavala Kudera of the Czech Republic, 0.031. That's their advantage. That's all gone. They've already gone behind the Canadians, but we saw the Canadians had a bit of a slide into corner one, so all that power that they generated, well, a great deal of it was lost. Wouldn't surprise me if the Czechs were now carrying higher top-end speed and would be pushing for the Canadians. They are indeed. There's only 54 thousandths of a second in it. This is very close. 88 thousandths, 108 kilometers per hour. They are just a little bit quicker than the Canadians as they round through the final corner. Could they catch them? No, they can't. In the end, they slip a little bit further behind.
The total time, and second place at the moment for Team Czech Republic for Team Matej Kipala and Jaromír Kudera.
Crowd starting to warm up here in Altenberg. I'm sure by mid-afternoon or early afternoon it'll be kicking off. Get the umpire band on the go. Always gets the atmosphere going, especially when some German success happens, and it's certainly looking likely at the halfway point. We still have the best to come, Eggert and Benneken. They'll be coming down last.
Good? Yep. Come on, guys. 1, 2.
Krusen and Shirk, 2 Americans. Great starters, really good starters. And is all that power going to get wasted? Little tap out of 9. But that sets them up nicely, actually, for the Kreisel. Can they hold a flat line? Reasonably so. And yes, good exit out of the Kreisel into 11.12.31 up. This is looking very slick. Krusen and Shirk showing some of their potential here. Get the head back. Heads up in the airflow, and the top end speed's always going to struggle again. They go near the woodwork through 16, and it could have been a lot faster. But the Canadians are bumped off the top. America now into the leaders' enclosure. They have some 21 sleds to come. Feet pointing together there, cleaving their way through the air. It was a bit sloppy at times, but it was fast and some good lines.
Startfreigabe erteilt.
So the Koreans now, coached by Mark Hatton, no less, of Great Britain, prepare to hit it off the hill. Certainly belting it out at the top, and .083 is their lead. Be great to see the Koreans getting up to the top 15 at a tricky track like Altenberg, even top 20. Certainly make their program feel a lot more worthy, though very, very wavy through the Kreisel. That's just taking a long line around what should be a simple flat line, adding meters onto the course. 107.1, the speed is sound enough. They're still in the lead, and they end in the lead. So well done, Korea. Brilliant slide. I think Mark Hatton, if we see him in shot, will be thrilled with that result. Consistency is the name of the game, and Popham Canyon style comes on. At least they got the right pair this time. The DJ managed to play it over the Americans last time. There's out of 9. A little bit of footwork on those Kufen, those uprights, just to get them going into the Kreisel at the right angle. Didn't work, I'm afraid. They came on far too sharply and didn't take a steer at the right point. And that probably cost them as much as 1,500, I'd suggest. And a bit of speed. Now, Kristen's Putins. And the man on the back, Marcin Kaviks, .032. In the lead. .855 and the start by the Latvians, and they're still in the lead, albeit 47 thousandths of a second. Now that's a flat line. .043, still in the lead ahead of Park and Cho. Their speed 107.2, almost identical to the Koreans, and thus don't lose what little gap they had. It's a small victory, just 41 thousandths of a second over the Koreans. But Park and Cho now likely to get bumped to 21st, but you never know. If one sled makes a slip, then now then, there's the Italians waiting inside the start house, keeping warm as Marek Solkanski, Karol Stuchlak of Slovakia, currently ranked 18th, get their chance to spank it off the hill. In the lead, and that has all gone as they exit Kreisel. 14 was slick, but the speed is not brilliant. So hanging on to first are the Latvians, Solkanski and Stuchlak. Slip down the order to 4th place. Gosh, and that guarantees the Koreans their top 20 then. So happy days for the Korean team. Not something they've done much before, and to get one in early in Olympic season will no doubt make a few headlines. So hitting it off the top, the men with number 2 on their breast, it's the Broz brothers of the Czech Republic. Broz brothers looking very fast, and 106.4, more than noise. And actually, when you hear a lot of noise, you should probably think they're doing a lot of steering, and they go behind. Their speed wasn't brilliant, they go further behind.
1 Minute 24,625 die Zeit, 1 Minute 24.625 the total time, and 3rd place at the moment. Also nach der Kurve 14 gibt es den leichten Anstieg und da waren die Füße mal kurz unten, da wird die Geschwindigkeit sowieso etwas geringer durch den Anstieg, und wenn man dann noch die Füße unten hat, dann wirkt sich das eben extrem negativ aus, und somit konnten sie sich nicht in Führung setzen. Rang 3 für die Tschechen Lukas und Antonin Broz.
Head back there. Brilliant bit of brave sliding, just using peripheral vision to see the sides as he was entering into the Kreisel.
Aus Italien. Christian Oberstolz, Patrick Huber, Italy. You're the next. Please prepare. Track is clear. Startfreigabe wurde erteilt.
Oberstolz and Gruber, they start with a small advantage, 74 thousandths of a second. That grows to 0.11 as they go through the Kreisel. Feet pointing together. That'll get them up to good top end speed if they can keep that form. A little bit of a wriggle through 12. Somehow their experienced piloting gets them through, but the speed has been damaged. 106.3 as they go round through 16, back up this very steep hill, and behind the Latvians, the speed was just too poor in the end. That little wriggle through 12 causing them to lose a lot of speed. Almost taken by Park and Cho. That would have been a huge scalp for the Koreans.
Also für die Zweiten des Altenberger Weltcups in der letzten Saison. Startfreigabe ist erteilt worden. Track is clear. Team USA.
Team USA, top of the track. It's Matt Mortensen and Jason Turderman. They do have a big advantage over the previous sliders.
Über eine Zehntel Vorsprung.
5.86 for the getaway, and they hang on to a 1/10 of a second advantage. Now 1100s through Kreisel. 11-12, 1600s. Almost sideways there as they go through 13. A 90-degree corner from flat to 90 in a split second. It's so fast. Mortensen and Tournament look really solid down the bottom as well. Quarter of a second up on the Latvians. And that was a very good second run to follow a solid first run. Great little bit of sliding there from 9 down into 10. They just spotted the exit and then head back. Good old Ronnie Ringeth on the microphone. A man who can speak just about every language in the world, and then a few more for good measure. Now, Ludwig Reiner, Patrick Rassner, 0.02 of a second is all they have on the Americans, who just laid down a very good performance. Of course, every pilot or a pair of pilots in this doubles that comes down does have some form of advantage over the previous duo. And they carry that advantage from the first run into the second. Right now, a 1/10 of a second up, the Italians. I was hoping for more out of them in the first run. They looked so good in Innsbruck when they medaled at the start of the season. Through 14, 107.2. The speed it's slower than Mortensen and Tournament, and their lead was ebbing away. It's ebbed away entirely. Hey, USA stay in first, and the Italians are down into second position. And it's just not going right here in Altenberg for these two. A pair that have the potential to be world beaters. Didn't really have the start or the drive this weekend. Now, some tracks do have or create a little bit of a mental block with teams, especially if you've crashed here before. Look at the heads up there. My best guess is a crash in the past, and everybody's crashed here at least a few times. May well weigh heavy on their minds. Hearns and Espinosa of the USA currently at 13, so 12 sleds to come after them.
War der Vorsprung auf ihre Landsleute im ersten Durchgang. Können sie sich hier durchsetzen im zweiten Durchgang?
0.051.
Führen sie noch? Ausfahrt
Now their advantage just creeping up a little bit. Hearns and Espinosa. It's USA versus USA, if you like. Oh, feet almost came down on the ice. They're down to just 0.02 of a second in the lead. As they round through 14, they come up too early and take a slap off the wall. 105.4, the poorest speed we've seen in the second run, and they're just going to drop like a stone, I'm afraid, down to third. 0.24 behind. Don't look too happy, fellas. They're your compatriots.
24.563. The total time for Team USA, Team Hearns and Espinosa. Also ihre Landsleute, Mortensen und Tournament, liegen in Führung. Dahinter die Italiener, Rieder und Rassner, und auf Rang 3 die Espinosa.
Not exactly a glorious end to their campaign here in Altenberg.
Aus Lettland.
A little bit sloppy, a little bit nervy, if you like. That's the kind of run they'd prefer to have done in the first run and then bettered it, but probably means they will not get the nod to run in the team relay, because Mortensen and Turdeman are the top American team this weekend anyway. So the six brothers next, Olympic medalists. Their start can sometimes let them down a little bit. They are 900ths of a second up. That's almost exactly where they were when they started, so yet to gain anything on Mortensen and Turdeman as they exit Kreisel. They've actually lost a couple of hundreds on to 13 and back off again. 0.046. They're losing yet more time and the speed is slower. It's going to come right down to the wire if they hang on or not. No, they don't. 0.003 of a second. Oh. So Mortensen and Turdeman take a couple of big scalps in a row. The six brothers and Ryder and Rasta, huge names in losing, down behind them.
The total time in second place at the moment for Andres in Euro 6. The Amerikaner Mortensen and Turdeman bleiben.
The six brothers can do this all season. Finish 10th, 12th, 15th. But whatever you do, don't write them off at the Olympics, because that's when they somehow come to the fore. When others lose their cool, these guys up their game 5 or 10%. Oh, that was sloppy. Banging off the wall a couple of times. But choosing not to steer is indeed the better option normally. So the Russians still in the lead, ahead of Mortensen and Turdeman, 0.156 as they come into the Kreisel. That's so flat there, brilliant. .167 now, they're doing everything right. Tanesiev and Antonov. 1067, what's gone wrong? The speed seems slow. I think the advantage is too big, though, for them to lose it. They were probably a little bit hopeful there for a second, the Americans. Only 106 kilometers per hour, their top-end speed, and that'll give Demchenko, the head coach of the Russians, something to think about. Is the sled setup a little wrong? Are they holding form that isn't quite right to get top-end speed, or was it just a little bit of a fluff somewhere in the midsection of the track that didn't allow them to get up to really top-end speed? That's a pretty slick steer, actually, that. Avoiding the wall, but also not going into a big fishtail slide there. Georg Hackl on the left there in the yellow jacket, just leaving the warm-up room, chatting away with Tobias Vendel and the Germans. Certainly looking like getting at least one, if not two, medals today. We'll have to wait and see, of course, but Chmielewski, Kowalewski of Poland, our next pair down the hill. Flopping off the end of 9 a little bit, though drifting nicely over to the left-hand side, entering into the Kreisel, spot on. Flat line, ooh, a little high, and wavy, almost turning into a full pressure corner there. 0.047, head comes right up. Chmielewski doesn't look comfortable on his line. Rights it again, though, but he's 0.008 of a second down. 106.1's poor speed, worse than the Russians were doing anyway, and there you go, further down the order to 5th. So Tanesiev and Antonov currently leading. Mortensen and Turdeman of the USA in second. The six brothers for Latvia are in 3rd. enters the Kreisel, you are coming back uphill slightly as well. It's a remarkably tricky corner to get right. And by right, I mean get a nice flat line and adopt a steer at the right point. When the pressure starts to come back on again, as it gets tighter around the corner, you want to get thrown up to the woodwork by the centrifugal force, and that's when to take the steer. Guessing that at 110 kilometers per hour is not exactly easy. And with all that G-force crushing you down as well, just adds to the difficulty. Thomas Stoy, Lawrence Koller. Wow, what advantage they had is already gone. Dare I say it, the umpire band has struck up in the Kreisel. Surely favouring the Germans with home field music. Stoy and Koller, probably partial to a bit of umpire themselves from Austria. On to 13. Ooh, wobbling around there into 14. They've managed to claw it back somehow. 107.3 is quicker than the Russians by about half a kilometre per hour, which probably suggests they'll hang on. They do by 0.02 of a second. That was backwards and forwards and full of what looked like bigger errors than they were. I think Stoy and Koller can thank their lucky stars. They are in the lead. Left to go, 7 sleds, Goike and Gam, Germany number 3, then Bogdanov and Medvedev. Then we have Nagler and Melier of Italy, Gudrumovics and Kalnins of Latvia, Vendel and Alt, the Olympic champions, Pence and Fischler, and World Cup champions, world champions, Eggert and Beneken to see us off. So chances are, looking at that lineup, perhaps that Nagler and Melier are the one pair that might, choke's an ugly word, but let's just use it anyway, could choke a little bit on this second run and slip down. But all of the other sleds, I can only see from recent form that they power down with a great second run. And it should be a good battle here. But the battle's really for bronze between Vendel and Alt, and all of those coming down now. And then Pence and Fischler, can they lay down a massive whopping second run and somehow hope that Eggert and Beneken just falter slightly, because there's not much between first and second. Yushikov and Prokhorov are the men coming down. The final Russian sled. They're behind Stoy and Koller. They're the one Russian pairing that do not start particularly quickly. Head comes up, but goes back again in time for 13, round through 14. The speed is key, 107.3. Oh, it's ever so slightly quicker than Stoy and Koller, and it's only a small gap to make up, but not quick enough. If it was 108s, perhaps, the speed, then they could have done it, but no such luck. Third place. They don't even get the honor of being top dogs in the Russian side. Denesiev and Antonov claim that, and will no doubt be going in the team relay then for Russia. (11-12) changeover. I like that a lot. But why the head came up into the airflow quite so dramatically, well, you can only assume it's just a lack of confidence in that changeover coming down into 13. Robin Goike, David Gam. Germany, Team 3. Well, their lead is only 0.07 of a second. And that's going to be like that all the way down to Vendel and Alt, who are holding on to that bronze medal position. It's really tight. Wow, rocking and rolling, but it looks good. Goike and Gam no doubt have the inside track, so to speak, on the track, and they're getting the right lines here. 108.5 kilometers per hour is quicker than anyone else so far in this second run. They're going to extend the lead to 0.26. Wow, that just might be good enough to make a fabulous run for the medals from 7th position. Certainly give the chills to the teams in 6th, 5th, 4th and 3rd, because that was a brutally quick run.
So, das war euer Applaus. Robin, das sah besser aus.
11-12. So slick.
Gut gemacht.
So Bogdanov and Medvedev take to the hill. Their advantage over Goike and Gam was about 200ths of a second coming into this. Make that just over 500ths. The Russians putting down a good run so far, but something went wrong from the Kreisel to the 11-12 labyrinth, and 14. Well, that was a smooth enough exit. A 1/10 of a second behind, though. The speed 107s suggests it's not going to be quick enough to catch the Germans, and they go to 2/10 down. Bogdanov and Medvedev, though, managed to better Denisiev and Antonov. So, in fact, with 3 Russian crews here today, it'll be Bogdanov and Medvedev, no doubt, who will be doing the team relay tomorrow. And a very sporting wave to what is a superb crowd here in Altenberg. Well, that was the start. Nothing wrong with that. It was actually just before that, the 100 meters of ice before that, where the damage was done. Nagler and Mallier of Italy next. .792. Goike and Gam behind. Nagler and Mallier are looking very slick for relative newbies to the World Cup, though they have gone behind in 16. The speed wasn't quite as good, and actually they've gone behind by some margin in the end. But still, for a young Italian duo in their first big World Cup race, they've managed to slot into 2nd position, and there are only 4 sleds to come, so guaranteed 6th at worst, which is a marvellous feat by Nagler and Mallier, and certainly suggests that Armin Zogler and the Italian setup don't just have one chance at a medal at the end of this season with Ryder and Rasta. Au contraire, these fellas are suddenly a threat because they look so strong at the start, and that's the key. And cool on the way down as well. Ronnie Ringer's just having a bit of fun down the bottom, creating one of the best atmospheres of any of the Luge World Cups here in Altenberg. Kudromovics, Kalnins, the Latvian duo in 4th position after run 1. They take to the hill now, and they do indeed have an advantage over Goike and Gam, which 42.047 to a 41.94. It's about a 1/10 of a second, which is pretty much where they were at after the start. So as they go into the Kreisel, exiting Kreisel. Ooh, avoid a rub down the right-hand wall, but it set them up nicely for an entrance early into 10. Do they benefit? Let's see what the speed is. That's key. Obviously not good enough. 107.2. Well, they were 27 thousandths of a second behind Goike and Gam. Probably slip a little bit more down to 2nd position. But actually the difference is quite large, over a 1/10 of a second. Goike and Gam's somewhat wild-looking slide certainly was quick. And Goike and Gam, despite being quite a late start draw, or an earlier start draw, depending on how you look at it, off the hill in this 2nd run, being in 7th position, I think have a very good chance of capturing the bronze. A very good chance. Just Wendel and Alt to beat now, as there's only 3 sleds to come. Currently ranked 3rd position, sitting in the bronze medal position. The Olympic champions, World Cup champions of the past. Their start has let them down a little bit, and there's quite a bit of snow just falling at the start there. You can see it. Will that affect their top-end speed? They are 0.163 up, though, on the young Germans, Goike and Gam, the junior world champions. Tobias Wendel there flopping a bit off of 9. It's game on, I think. This is going to be quite tight at the end, if that's how they're going to slide. It's down to 77 thousandths. Formerly the Masters. Could they be beaten by a young German duo? Oh my goodness, 107.6. I think they might have just stopped the rock, but there's only 45 thousandths of a second in it. And the finish couldn't come quick enough. It didn't come quick enough. They are 3 thousandths of a second behind Goike and Gam, who at worst now will get the bronze medal. But they're not likely to get 4th place, and that will hurt. The 3rd best Germans on the day, assuming, of course, Eggert and Benneken live up to the big billing of being the world's best and slide it home successfully as the last sled down the hill. Before them, though, we have Pence and Fischler of Austria. Benson Fischler then. The great Austrian duo who are coming in out of the cold, so to speak, having had a shocking previous race, had to qualify through the Nations Cup. The pair that crashed out of the Olympics as they were heading towards a medal. They're so hit and miss, these guys. They were certainly hit in the first run. They've got a big old advantage over Goiker and Gam, but that's not what they're here for. At their elderly age in Luge, it'll be gold or bust, I imagine. 108.2 kilometers per hour is quick. They're certainly holding off at the young pairing of Goiker and Gam, and they cross the line with 1800ths advantage. And everybody has to stand up and applaud that. Magnificent slide by the Austrians, and they could do about as much as they possibly could there and put the pressure on the final pair, Eggert and Benneken, who will feel it a little bit for the first time this season. They have 1100ths advantage. Coming into this final run, the last pair still to come, as we have a little look how Pence rolls. He rolls dangerously, head back wherever he can. Gets the top end speeds through, well, you could say rolling the dice, or you could say calculated risk. Well, this will see what Eggert and Benneken are made of. We already know they're made of pretty stern and quick stuff. They've proven that time and time again last season. They've already won the first two races this season. Oh, little tap out of 9, coming down into 10. So they went from 1100s up to 1600s from a super quick start. But that may well go the other way. No, it doesn't. That tap has not affected them. They're now 1800s up. It's going to take a really sloppy corner here to lose this. 2/10 up, 108.9. Oh, the Germans are preparing to cheer enormously. They cannot lose, and they have not lost. They indeed extend the lead by some 1500ths of a second. So the fastest run of anybody in the first run, really by a long margin the fastest run of anybody in the second run. So choke, not they just stepped up to the plate and hit a home run right there. That was a tremendous slide by Eggert and Benneken. Germany's #1 are absolutely the world's #1 right now, and by some margin, it has to be said. Another race where they win by tenths of a second. Quarters of a second is what you measure their wins by. Even half a second I could see them winning this season by in a 2-run race. It's absolutely possible, and so consistent as well. Where they look like they're making a mistake, they somehow pull it back with their other attributes. So Eggert and Benneken take the win. Pence and Fischler will get the silver medal. Goiker and Gam get up onto the podium for a bronze for the first time this season. Wendel and Alt, though, that'll hurt them. They are the slowest of 3 Germans, down in 4th position. Ryder and Rasner, the 6 brothers, well, we expected more out of them. Chivalevsky, Kovalevsky of Poland, that's a solid result for the Czechs. Krusen and Shirk a bit disappointing, down in 20th, but the Koreans in 18th, great news for them. Altenberg, Germany, it was a great race, not so much for the actual tightness of it, but just the impressive dominance of the team that won. Tony Eggert, Sascha Benneken, they had, by their standards this season, a slim margin of lead, just 87 thousandths of a second, but a good solid run by the Austrians and added to the pressure in this second run. But somehow, with so many strong points, They are the fastest starters, the best top-end speed achievers, the finest pilots. They just seem to have it all, the best sled. And even with a little bump out of 9, they did a tremendous start, which added almost a 1/10 of a second straight away to their lead over the Austrians. Their speed, mid 108 kilometers per hour, was just about as fast as anybody, and if not slightly faster actually in this second run. Ice perhaps running a little bit slower during the second run, and in the end extended their lead to over a 1/4 of a second. And when you consider it's a sport of thousandths of a second, that's a pretty big beating. So here are the results of the doubles luge. Eggert and Benneken of Germany, Goike and Gam, the other Germans, on the podium, with Pence and Fischler sandwiched with the silver for Austria. Well, Pence and Fischler on the left there, pretty happy. They certainly rolled the dice and went for the gold, which is what you would expect from them as well. Well, Eggert and Benneken are certainly just going to extend their whopping great lead in the overall World Cup standings. Pence and Fischler do themselves no harm. Perhaps they won't be in the Nations Cup in the next race, having to qualify off of that good, solid points game there. Goike and Gam, thrilled no doubt to get on and get a podium finish with a bronze, but the day so far has been all about Eggert and Benneken. Tremendous.